Mistress of All Evil, A Tale of the Dark Fairy by Serena Valentino. Copyright 2009, Disney Enterprises Incorporated, published by Disney Press. Chapter 11, The Dark Fairy's Gift. Many years had passed since Nanny had taken the young Maleficent out of school, so she could focus on her own brand of magic, giving her room to explore and experience the world of magic outside fairy lore. Maleficent had changed considerably from the little creature she'd been when Nanny found her in the hollow of the Crow Tree. Though none of the other fairies would admit it, Maleficent was remarkably beautiful. Nanny had always known Maleficent would grow into her features, but beauty didn't matter much to Maleficent. Her concerns lay elsewhere. One bright sunny morning, she and Nanny were sitting at the kitchen table. They were sipping their tea out of black and silver teacups and enjoying the black currant scones Nanny had baked earlier that morning. Nanny could tell Maleficent had something she wanted to announce. Maleficent was always making declarations of some sort, about a spell she had just mastered, or a new subject she wanted to tackle. But this particular announcement took Nanny by surprise. "Nanny, I would like to sit for the fairy exams," Maleficent finally said. Nanny cast an uneasy eye on her daughter. "Why? Your magic far surpasses fairy magic, so why bother?" "Because I want to master all manners of magic, and I don't want to give those flighty fairies an excuse to mock me. Besides, I've mastered my means of teleporting from one place to the next. Really, there's no reason I shouldn't become a wish-granting fairy if I choose to be," Maleficent argued. "Do you want to be one, my dear?" Nanny asked. "I never imagined you would be inclined to such things." "Why shouldn't I? I am a fairy after all, and I shouldn't shrink from any school of magic simply because my old classmates were unkind," Maleficent responded. "Because I've been practicing, and I think I'm ready for exams. I will be eligible to take the exam tomorrow, if I recall correctly." "You do recall correctly, my dear, as always, and without fail," Nanny said with a sigh. "And I don't doubt you're ready for the exam. You could have taken it when you were 10, although now that you're turning 16, it is the proper time to sit for the exam." Nanny seemed lost in her thoughts for a moment. "If you wish, you may take the exam. Far be it from me to hold you back from furthering your education, since most of your education has been either self-taught or taught by me. It's not official. It will do you well to have a certificate to prove you have completed your fairy lessons. Though I thought we would spend your 16th birthday in some other fashion." Maleficent smiled. "Did you hear that, Diablo? I'm going to sit for the fairy exams." Diablo flew into the room, cawing in celebration, his wings outstretched. Nanny loved seeing Maleficent that happy. And Maleficent's relationship with Diablo, a new acquisition for her aviary, made Nanny smile. Though Maleficent still held a very special place for her crows, she loved her raven Diablo, who never seemed to leave her side for very long. "Come on, Diablo, let's practice wish-granting in the garden. I need to be perfect for my exams tomorrow." Nanny chuckled to herself as the two rushed into the garden. It had been a joke between the two of them that Maleficent had decided to name the raven Diablo. It was their way of poking fun at the fairies for having given Maleficent such a menacing name. Nanny had just stood to put another kettle on the fire when there was a knock at the door. "Come in," she yelled in a cheery voice. It was her sister, the fairy godmother. "Ah, come in, sister. I just put some water on for tea. Would you like to join me in a cup?" "Yes, please," the fairy godmother replied as she stepped into the cottage. Nanny took a cup from the cupboard that she knew her sister would fancy, a pretty opalescent teacup that reflected different muted colors depending on the light. Nanny placed the cup and teapot on the table, pretending she didn't know why her sister had come by for a visit. The truth was, her sister never came over. They weren't the sort of sisters who met for tea, but Nanny made a pretense that they were. Secretly, she wished they were that sort of sisters. The fairy godmother cleared her throat. "I'm here because I'm passing by and I noticed Maleficent practicing wish-granting in the front garden." "Indeed she is," Nanny said as she poured the tea and put out the sugar cubes for her sister. The fairy godmother's normally pleasant face had contorted into a crooked frown. "What's troubling you, my sister?" Nanny asked, pretending she hadn't already guessed. "Is Maleficent turning 16 tomorrow?" the fairy godmother asked. Nanny narrowed her eyes at her sister's question. "Yes, she is, sister." The fairy godmother pursed her lips. "How can you be sure?" "We don't know when she was born." Nanny smiled thinly, much in the same way her sister did when she was saying something unpleasant. "You know our powers work differently. I can see time, and can visit those times. I know tomorrow is her birthday. Well, 16 or not, as head mistress, you know a fairy cannot sit for exams without first successfully completing all the classes necessary to qualify her for the honor," the fairy godmother reminded Nanny. "And as head mistress, I can make exceptions when I choose," Nanny said. "I would make the same case for any fairy who had the same extensive knowledge as Maleficent. She's learned everything necessary to qualify her for the exams and more. I say she sits for them." The fairy godmother stood up from her chair, slamming her hands on the table. "I don't understand what you see in this girl. Our powers may work differently, but I've seen her future in my dreams. She will bring you nothing but heartache. I've seen it, and so have you." "Time is not fixed, sister," Nanny said, rebuking her. "The future especially. You know this. She deserves a chance, and she certainly deserves the opportunity to have a future, which she wouldn't have had if I hadn't come back and taken her in." "Not this again. I won't have you condemning me for the rest of our many long lifetimes with this nonsense," the fairy godmother snapped. "Nonsense? You left her in the cold. You left her alone with the crows. You didn't care if she lived or died." "It's useless talking to you about this. You won't see reason. She is evil. You know that she is. Bring her for the exam if you wish. I can't do anything to stop you. But the decision to pass or fail her remains mine." Nanny shook her head. "You are so fairy-minded. If it doesn't fit inside your ideal version of the world, if it stands out in any way, then you want it ripped from your view. Maleficent is like a black orchid in a field of pink peonies. You're incapable of letting the orchid flourish. You would remove it because it looks out of place. You love Maleficent because she's an orchid, and you hate her because I do." Nanny was getting angry. Angry at her sister for not being the sister she had always wanted, and for being so closed-minded. But most of all, she was angry because she was worried her sister might be right. "No, stop it. She's not right. You've raised a beautiful, intelligent, gifted young woman. You've given her every opportunity, and she will make you proud." "Keep telling yourself that. Maybe one day you will actually believe it," the fairy godmother snapped, leaving before drinking her tea. She was angry, a feeling she hated. The fairy godmother liked herself always to be seen as happy and good. But that ideal version of herself was never reflected at her in her sister's eyes. With a steely look, the fairy godmother passed Maleficent on her way out of the yard. "Why does she hate me so much?" Maleficent asked as she went back inside the cottage. "She's just jealous, my dear. Don't you worry. Now, help me get ready for dinner. We're having guests to celebrate your birthday," Nanny said, in her usual calming tone. "Now, where's your pet?" Maleficent looked down, as if she'd been caught at something she was sure Nanny would disapprove of. "I sensed the presence of powerful witches in the area, and I sent him to see who they were." Nanny's mouth pinched and shifted to the left side of her face, as it often did when she was perplexed. "My dear, why didn't you just ask me?" "I could have told you it was the Odd Sisters on their way here. I've asked them to join us for dinner this evening." Maleficent was shocked. "The Odd Sisters? The authors of all those spell books? They're coming here?" "Yes, I thought they would be a lovely surprise for your birthday. I know how well you love their books of magic. They're old friends of mine, and I haven't had them over for quite some time. I figured this was a lovely opportunity for a visit. I'd thought to cancel after you told me you planned to take the exam. I knew my sister won't like their being here, but the Odd Sisters insisted. I just hope my sister doesn't take her frustrations out on you tomorrow when she's grading your exam." Maleficent wondered how Nanny had been able to send the Odd Sisters an owl while her sister was there. She sent us the message telepathically, of course, little one. A trio of voices called from outside. Startled, Maleficent jumped back. 3 women appeared at the door. They were Lucinda, Ruby, and Martha, identical triplets, the Odd Sisters, the author of some of her favorite spell books. She'd never imagined being able to meet them, and she wondered why Nanny had never told her she knew the famous witches. Maleficent looked over the Odd Sisters. She hadn't expected them to be identical, but there they stood, a trio of beautiful women. All of them had pitch-black hair and overly large black eyes, lined with black kohl. Their tiny little rosebud mouths were painted with red lip paint, which was striking against their very pale skin. Their skin was almost too perfect, and they looked like porcelain dolls. Everything about them matched, down to their hairstyles and their dark green voluminous dresses, embroidered with rusty autumn leaves that seemed to change color depending on the light. They wore their hair in intricate buns with green and orange gems woven into their springy curls. Maleficent had never seen such beautiful women in her life. She hadn't expected her favorite spellcasters to be so lovely. "Thank you, my dear," the triplet in the middle said. She seemed to be the eldest. Come in, Nanny said excitedly as she pulled out more cups for their guest. "Let's sit down and have some tea. I would like you to get to know my daughter, Maleficent. It has been far too long since I have seen you, and introductions are far overdue." "Oh, we know all about Maleficent," Lucinda said. "We watch her in our mirrors," said Martha. Ruby hushed them. "Shh! Don't tell them our secrets!" Maleficent laughed. She'd never met anyone like the women, and she'd instantly fallen in love with them. It seemed they were mind readers like Nanny. Maleficent was used to being in the company of someone who knew her thoughts, so it didn't bother her at all. "We love you too. Happy birthday, Maleficent. Happy birthday. Tomorrow's an extraordinary day," sang all 3 sisters. 16 is a very special age, very special indeed. We wouldn't miss it, my dear. "So, one of legends, is your sister still up to her old tricks?" Lucinda asked as she intently watched Nanny sit out the teacups. Nanny smiled to herself, knowing one of the witches would slip a teacup into her pocket, as they did almost every time they visited. "What does she mean by old tricks, Nanny?" Maleficent asked. Nanny gave the sisters a sideways look. "Nothing, my dear, it's nothing." "Don't lie to the child," Lucinda screeched. "Never helps to tell lies," Ruby sang. "Never helps," Martha chimed in. "You can't protect her forever, Granny." Nanny laughed at the Granny remark, but didn't take it personally. She knew Martha was just being silly. Besides, she was much older than even the Odd Sisters probably suspected. "Come now, ladies, no one is lying to the girl," Nanny said, trying to calm the Odd Sisters. "She's becoming a woman tomorrow. 16, 16, 16. The sisters all chiming in, as if in a chaotic choir. The rhythmic canter of their voices was intoxicating to Maleficent. "Protect me from what?" Maleficent asked. "From the truth, my dear. The truth!" The sisters laughed so loudly Maleficent's crows scattered from her treehouse. Their caws echoed throughout the fairylands. "Ha! That will cause those simpletons a fright!" the Odd Sisters cried. "What, my crows?" asked Maleficent, taking in everything about the sisters she could. She examined their eyes, their expressions, the way they moved their hands. The women were a marvel to her. "Oh, yes, everyone knows crows are evil," the sisters said, and laughed. "Oh, stop this foolishness," Nanny cried as she poured the tea. "They're laughing at the fairies' expense, of course, Maleficent, not yours." Lucinda seemed to be scrutinizing Maleficent even more closely than Maleficent had been scrutinizing the sisters. "You have yourself a smart young witch here, my friend. I think she was already aware of our intent." "I'm a fairy, not a witch," Maleficent said. "Oh, you are a witch, my dear. A truer witch than we've ever met," Ruby exclaimed. "Your powers may even surpass those of the one of legend someday," Martha squeaked. "Perhaps sooner than we'd expected," Lucinda said somberly. "But Nanny's a fairy too," Maleficent insisted. You may have both been born fairies, but you are witches at heart. You do real magic, Lucinda cried. The sisters laughed so hard, Maleficent thought the windows of their little cottage would shatter. Besides, what is a fairy without wings, if not a witch, little one? The sisters sang in unison, making Maleficent smile. Nanny loved to see her girl so happy, but was distracted by a sharp, burning smell. Oh, I almost forgot dinner. The witches laughed, as Nanny rushed to the oven in a panic. You didn't burn the dinner, did you, Granny? Asked Ruby, making her sisters laugh even harder. No, I didn't, thank the gods, said Nanny. Come now, let's eat. During dinner, they all discussed the exams that were to take place the following day. The witches were careful not to do or say anything that would give the fairy godmother cause to think Maleficent had cheated in any way. Oh, I think Circe is going to love pretending to be a princess in need tomorrow, Ruby said as she picked at her food, pushing it around her plate. Circe? Asked Maleficent. She's the odd sister's much younger sister. She will be playing the part of a charge for the examination. We usually ask friends to bring their sons and daughters or little brothers and sisters for the exam. Since the odd sisters were already coming to visit for your birthday, I thought they could bring Circe to the exam. None of the students have ever met Circe, so it would make the exam experience more realistic, Nanny explained. Is she my age? Maleficent asked. Martha shook her head. No, dear, much younger, but I dare say one day, when the age difference no longer matters, you would be good friends. If everything goes to plan, Lucinda said, finishing Martha's prediction. If the stars do not align, sang Ruby. Oh, yes. You may be friends. I see friendship, Martha added. Or disaster, they said together in a strange chorus. Nanny shot the odd sisters a dangerous look. They blinked back with worried expressions. Let's hope the stars do not align, Nanny said sternly. Maleficent noticed the strange exchange, but pretended it hadn't happened. Well, I wish she were here. I would like to meet her, Maleficent said. She was excited by the idea of meeting a witch closer to her age. And give the scary godmother a reason to disqualify you? I think not, Martha said. Oh, no, my dear, Ruby insisted. No, 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 screeched the odd sisters together. Maleficent was amused by the sisters' outburst. Oh, I see. If she joined us for dinner, the fairy godmother would think we had colluded to help me pass the exam. Yes, although she's not allowed to be your charge tomorrow. Oh, no, that wouldn't do, because we are friends with your nanny. Hades forbid. She will join us for cake tomorrow. Circe loves birthday cake. You're turning 16. 16! We will all eat cake if the stars are not right. Nanny changed the subject. Darling, there's something else you should know. Not all the stand-in charges are real. Some of them are merely projections, like Ghost. They're trickier than the stand-in charges because they are based on real people from history. Sometimes they're from the future, or sometimes they're from the past. But Maleficent wasn't listening. What is it, dear? What has you distracted? Nanny asked. Diablo. He never came back after I sent him out earlier today, Maleficent said. She had been enjoying the company of Nanny and the odd sisters so much she had almost forgotten about Diablo. To spy on us, you mean? The odd sisters asked. Oh, we saw him. He's a good pet, my dear, but he needs to practice his spying skills a bit more before you send him off on such errands. The sisters laughed some more. I'm sure he's fine, little one, just taking the opportunity to fly about, Ruby said, cackling. Our cat Flans does the same, Martha said, laughing even harder. Oh, she doesn't fly, mind you. She slinks. She slinks and slinks and slinks away. She's beastly. Sometimes she stays out for days at a time, never bothering to tell us where she's going or where she's been. Lucinda agreed with her sisters. I wouldn't worry about it, dear. I'm sure your little devil is fine. Nanny put her hand on Maleficent's and smiled. I know you are enjoying our company, dear one, but you'd better get to bed. Your exam is rather early tomorrow morning. Can I sleep in my treehouse in case Diablo comes back? Nanny nodded. Yes, just do not stay up all night waiting for him. Everyone stood to hug Maleficent. "Good night, Maleficent." "Good night? We love you, Maleficent. Happy birthday." Maleficent couldn't remember ever being happier. She had a wonderful mother and nanny, and now 3 amazing witches in her life who loved her. Her 16th birthday was bound to be better than she had hoped. If only she weren't so worried about Diablo. Everything would be perfect. Everything would be all right. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to keep up to date on all the new magic. Have a magical day.